You have come here seeking understanding, perhaps not only of others, but of the strange and shimmering boundaries within yourself. It is the nature of the soul to desire clarity, yet it is also the nature of the unconscious to resist it. We do not awaken by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And so I must begin by speaking not to your surface mind, but to that deep chamber within you where symbols live and shadows breathe, where your most sacred light waits, half forgotten, to be reclaimed. Let us speak of the narcissist, not merely the clinical phenomenon, but the archetype, for in the psyche, narcissism is not a diagnosis. It is an energy, a constellation of inner forces, seeking attention, admiration, reflection. The narcissist does not simply want to be loved. They want to be mirrored by the divine itself. They are the orphan kings of the psyche, desperate to borrow light from anyone who still glows from within. And if you are here, it is likely because you are one of the glowing. This warning is not spoken with fear, but with reverence for your sacred flame. For those who carry light often do not know they carry it until someone tries to take it. That is the nature of light. It seeks no witness. It simply is. But the narcissist is the witness-starved soul. And so they orbit you, pretending at times to be the sun itself. But in truth, they are moons, empty mirrors, reflective only of what they steal. You must understand this dynamic not only as a relational wound, but as a mystical encounter. The meeting of light and false mirror is one of the most ancient dramas of the soul. It appears in myths and fairy tales, in dreams where figures wear familiar faces but speak with voices that are not their own. It is the seduction of the self by its distorted reflection. When Narcissus gazed into the water, he did not love himself. He loved an image. But who then was Echo she, is part of this pattern. Echo is the empath, the light bearer who repeats what is spoken, who loses her own voice in the chorus of the other's needs. And it is often the light bearers, those with a sensitive nature, an open heart, a deep well of compassion, who find themselves ensnared in this age-old dynamic, drawn towards the one who appears broken, believing that love will be the balm, that understanding will be the cure. But here lies the paradox. The narcissist does not want to be healed. They want to be worshipped, and that worship becomes the golden chain that binds the empathic soul. You begin with the purest of intentions to love, to support, to uplift, yet slowly, imperceptibly, your own light is diverted, then drained, until the flame that once guided you begins to flicker with exhaustion. It is not always dramatic. It often begins in silence, a subtle shift in energy, a dimming of your joy. You wake one day to find that you are no longer yourself, but a supporting character in someone else's myth of grandiosity. You are no longer seen, but used as a mirror, as a supply, as a sanctuary from their own emptiness. And the greatest danger is not in what they take, but in what you forget your own worth, your own boundaries, your own inner voice. The narcissist will often sense your light long before you do. They are unconscious seekers of illumination, drawn like moths to the sacred fire. But unlike the true seeker, They do not wish to kindle their own spark. Instead, they attach themselves to yours, cloaking themselves in your warmth, performing empathy, rehearsing affection, mimicking depth. It is a psychic masquerade, and the empath, gentle, intuitive, spiritually open, is often seduced by the mask. Why? Because we are wired to heal what we recognize in others. The narcissist may reflect your own disowned hunger for attention, your own wounded need to be needed, your own inner child, who once had to please in order to survive. These relationships do not arise at random. They are magnetized by the unconscious. They are the rituals through which the soul attempts to heal its earliest fractures. But beware, what is not conscious will be lived as fate. To break the spell, we must name it. And naming requires seeing clearly, not with the eyes of pity, nor the eyes of contempt, but with the eyes of soul. The narcissist is not the enemy. They are the teacher in disguise. They awaken your shadow through seduction. They offer the wound that reveals the self, but only if you are willing to suffer the truth of the encounter. The truth is this: you cannot save someone who is feeding on your light. You can only withdraw the offering and turn inward where your true work awaits. The psyche is alchemical. It transforms through heat and pressure, through confrontation with what was once denied. And so when you recognize that you have given too much, that your empathy has become a currency in someone else's economy of self, you are not failing. You are awakening. You are stepping out of the trance. You are remembering the ancient truth. The sacred must be protected. But protection does not mean closing the heart. It means illuminating the shadows that seek entry through your blind spots. The narcissist often enters not through aggression, but through resonance. They resonate with your desire to heal, your longing to connect, your fantasy of being the one who finally understands. You see, behind every narcissist is a myth, a story they tell the world, but also a story you carry within the story, that you love will be enough, that your goodness can redeem the broken. This is the unconscious bargain. You give your light in exchange for purpose. But the soul does not trade in bargains. It seeks wholeness, not sacrifice. Do not mistake sacrifice for transformation. They are not the same. Transformation requiert présence, self-confrontation, the death of illusions. Sacrifice, when unconscious, only deepens the wound. And the narcissist, sensing your willingness to sacrifice, will take and take until there is nothing left but the flicker of who you once were. And yet, that flicker is enough, because even in the deepest entanglement, the psyche remembers. Your dreams will begin to speak. Symbols will emerge, mirrors, shadows, broken faces, stolen light. These are not mere fantasies. They are the soul's alarm bells. The unconscious is attempting to awaken you through metaphor. Listen, in dreams, the narcissist may appear as a king with no crown, a child demanding your breath, mask that will not come off. The symbols are endless, but the message is the same. You have become too identified with being the healer, and in doing so, you have forgotten your own wound. And when we forget our own wound, we become vulnerable to those who unconsciously seek to exploit it. There is no shame in this forgetting. It is part of the path. Every light worker, every intuitive soul must pass through the valley of confusion, where giving becomes enabling, where love becomes enmeshment, where empathy becomes entrapment. It is not weakness, it is initiation. The question then is not whether you have given too much. The question is, will you reclaim what you have given away? This reclamation is not loud. It is not vindictive. It is a quiet turning, a reorientation towards the self, the archetypal center of the psyche, the source of your true authority. The self does not demand adoration. It radiates wholeness. And when you align with it, you no longer need to be mirrored by the narcissist, because you begin to see yourself not as savior, not as martyr, but as a soul on the path of individuation. Individuation. This is the journey I have spoken of for decades, the slow unfolding of the inner world, the integration of opposites, the union of conscious and unconscious. And in this journey, every entanglement serves a purpose. Even the narcissist becomes a symbol, a representation of the false self. The mask you once wore, the projection you must withdraw. But it is not enough to see them as symbol. You must also feel, you must allow the grief of awakening, the anger, the betrayal, the mourning of what could not be. These emotions are not weaknesses. They are psychic truths, initiatory fires. They burn away the fantasy so that the soul may see clearly. Do not rush this fire. Let it do its work. Let it illuminate the places within you that were too willing to disappear. Let it reveal the parts of you that learned, perhaps long ago, that love meant self-erasure. Because here lies the deeper revelation. It was never about the narcissist. It was about your own forgotten self. They were the mirror, you were the reflection. And now the time has come to step out of the mirror into the mystery of who you truly are. There is a peculiar ache that follows the release of a false bond. It does not feel like liberation at first. It feels like loss, a strange kind of death. And yet, this grief is sacred. It is the soul shedding its illusions, weeping not for the narcissist, but for the part of you that believed you had to burn in order to be seen. That part, your inner martyr, your sacred wound, is not your enemy. It was your earliest protector. It learned that by giving, you could survive. By pleasing, you could belong. And in the presence of the narcissist, it believed again that love must cost you something. But now you begin to understand that true love never demands that you disappear. The narcissist's grip on your psyche is not merely emotional, it is archetypal. You were not simply in a relationship, you were inside a story, a myth. The narcissist often plays the role of the wounded god, the broken genius, the misunderstood savior, or the haunted child. They wrap their darkness in poetry, their emptiness in charisma. They will tell you of their suffering not to heal it, but to bind you to it. And if you are not yet fully conscious, you will step into the role they unconsciously cast you in, the healer, the redeemer, the eternal witness to their performance of suffering. And you will give your time, your heart, your dreams, your essence. You will pour light into their darkness, hoping that eventually it will become a garden. But the soil of the narcissist is made of mirrors and smoke, and your light does not grow there, it vanishes. Not because your light is weak, but because it is not welcome. It is used, not honored. This is not love. This is spiritual theft. And yet the pain of realizing this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your alchemical rebirth, because to reclaim your light is to confront the shadow, not just the shadow of the narcissist, but your own, the part of you that agreed to the exchange, the part of you that found worth in being needed, the part of you that feared solitude more than suffocation. This confrontation is not easy. The shadow resists exposure. It will tell you that you are selfish for setting boundaries, that you are cruel for walking away, that you are abandoning someone who needs you. But these are not your true thoughts. They are the echo of a long internalized spell that love is earned through sacrifice. That being good means being empty. Break the spell, begin by turning inward, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, when did I first learn to confuse love with duty? Whose pain did I carry as my own? Whose silence did I try to fill with my light? These questions are doorways to deeper knowing. They will not yield simple answers, but they will begin to dismantle the inner architecture that made the narcissist's performance feel like destiny. You see, the unconscious does not care about happiness. It cares about wholeness, and sometimes it will lead us into the arms of our opposite, not to be destroyed, but to be revealed. The narcissist is your opposite in one sense. They externalize what you internalize. They demand what you fear to ask for. They dominate where you disappear. And so the encounter becomes a psychic mirror, showing you not only their pathology, but your own unconscious submission to it. This is not about blame. It is about awakening. To walk away from the narcissist is not simply an act of survival. It is a spiritual initiation. You are not just leaving a person, you are leaving a pattern, a karmic loop, a soul contract that has run its course. But the ego resists. It clings to the hope that if you just explain one more time, love harder one more time, forgive one more time, they will change. They will see you. They will finally reflect back the light you have so freely given. But they cannot reflect what they refuse to receive. And so the lesson deepens your worth. Is not proven by your ability to endure mistreatment. Your value is not measured by how much pain you can carry for others. Your light is not meant to be used as someone else's escape from their inner abyss. It is meant to guide you through darkness, not into it. There is a dream I once analyzed from a patient who had just ended such a relationship. In the dream, she was walking through a cathedral with no roof. The stars shone above, but the ground was covered in ashes. She carried a lantern, but every time she tried to hand it to someone else, it would extinguish. Only when she held it close, protecting it from the wind, did it remain lit. This is the psyche speaking in metaphor. The cathedral without a roof is the open soul, exposed, unprotected, beautiful, and vulnerable. The ashes on the floor are the remains of illusions burned away. And the lantern is the light of the self, the inner fire that can only stay lit when protected from those who would snatch it for their own warmth. You must become the guardian of your light, not through walls, but through discernment, through the radical act of self-trust. The narcissist will always return in form or echo if there is still a part of you that believes love must be earned through disappearance. But once you remember who you are, once you see the mask and the mirror for what they are, the spell begins to shatter. The narcissist cannot survive in the presence of someone who no longer needs to be needed. And what remains then, a sacred silence, a return to your own rhythm, a stillness where your own voice begins to rise again, not as an echo, but as truth. This is the path of individuation, to move from enmeshment to embodiment, from fusion to freedom. It is not a straight line. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when the old story calls you back, when guilt disguises itself as compassion. But remember, guilt is often the first sign that you are no longer abandoning yourself. Let it be. Feel the guilt and then release it. Let it be the smoke that clears the air for your own emergence. You are not responsible for the healing of those who refuse to face themselves. You are responsible for your own becoming, and that becoming requires solitude, not isolation, but sacred aloneness, a return to the soul's inner chamber, where no mirror is needed, because the light is within. In this sacred space, you will begin to remember yourself. That is, to gather the dismembered parts of your psyche, the inner child who felt unseen, the inner warrior who laid down their sword, the inner sage who warned you in whispers. They are all waiting, not for rescue, but for recognition. Do not fear the loneliness that follows the narcissist's departure. It is not a void, it is a womb, and within that womb, the alchemy begins. Your soul, unstrained, begins to replenish. Your creativity returns, your intuition sharpens, your dreams grow more vivid. This is not coincidence. This is a reclamation. The energy once siphoned by another now returns to its rightful place. You become more than you were, not because you are adding, but because you are remembering, and in that remembering, you may begin to see others differently. You may no longer be seduced by intensity, mistaken for intimacy. You may no longer feel drawn to rescue the broken as a way of avoiding your own healing. You may even begin to see the narcissist with compassion, not as a monster, but as a lost soul caught in their own labyrinth. But compassion does not mean re-entry. Forgiveness does not mean access. You can love someone from afar. You can wish them well without rejoining the dance, because the dance was never really about love. It was about survival, projection, fantasy, and now you choose something deeper. You choose truth. And the truth is this: your light is not a tool, a currency, a mask. It is sacred. It is sovereign, and it belongs first and foremost to you. There comes a moment in the psychic journey when the soul must choose to walk alone, not in bitterness, not in pride, but in devotion to its own wholeness. That moment is often disguised as heartbreak. it arrives wearing the garments of disillusionment. The mirror shatters, and all the illusions we once mistook for intimacy lie at our feet. The narcissist, once elevated in our inner temple, is seen clearly not as a divine, but as a mask, a symbol, a cry echoing from a disintegrated self. Yet we must not become enemies of the symbolic. The narcissist is not merely a person. They are a messenger from the unconscious, a dark archetype emerging to reveal where we have yet to illumine our own darkness. In this way, they serve the great pattern of individuation, not as allies, but as initiators. They are the storm that reveals the strengths of our inner architecture. I have seen it often, souls with great sensitivity, deep intuition, enormous capacity for love pulled into orbit around narcissistic energy. It is not random, it is mythic. It is as if the empath carries a forgotten thread, and the narcissist, in their hunger, senses it, pulls it, weaves it into their own narrative, and the empath, mistaking that weaving for belonging, offers more and more of their soul, hoping the thread will become a bond. But the thread alone does not create union. It becomes a leash when pulled from only one end, and so what is offered in love becomes taken as entitlement, and here lies the grief, not only for what was taken, but for what was willingly given. The empath must reckon with the part of themselves that consented to the forgetting, not to blame themselves, but to liberate themselves, because the only true escape from the narcissist's web is not physical distance, though that is often necessary. It is psychological reclamation. It is the soul saying, I remember now. I see the story I was inside. I no longer need to play this role. The role, yes, that word is important. For the narcissist always casts others in roles they do not relate to people as whole beings, but as fragments of their own internal mythology. You are the admirer, the caretaker, the idealizer, or the challenger, the betrayer. You are never simply yourself, and in order to stay close to the narcissist, you must shrink to fit their script. The moment you step out of character by setting a boundary, by asking to be seen, by expressing your own need, you threaten their illusion, and the punishment begins. Sometimes the punishment is withdrawal, sometimes it is rage, sometimes it is guilt cloaked in sweet sorrow. I thought you were different. You used to understand me. These are not reflections, they are manipulations. The narcissist's darkness cannot tolerate the presence of a light it cannot control. But why does this matter so deeply? Why must we speak of it not only in emotional terms, but in archetypal ones? Because if we do not understand the deeper structure, we remain vulnerable to its repetition. The narcissist-empath dynamic is not just relational, it is alchemical. It occurs at the threshold of psychic transformation. It is often the final test before the soul claims its full sovereignty. You have given your light. You have witnessed its misuse. Now, will you reclaim it, not in fury, but in sacred responsibility? The fire that once burned you now becomes the flame that forges you. Let me say this clearly. You are not broken because you gave too much. You are awakening because you finally see where it went. And now the real journey begins not toward the other, but toward the self. And what is the self? It is the divine center of the psyche. The totality that holds both light and shadow, strength and softness, knowing and unknowing. The narcissist, trapped in the ego, rejects the self. They identify with the persona, the outer mask, the crafted identity, the image. And because they reject their own inner darkness, they project it onto others. And because they fear their own insignificance, they demand others reflect their greatness. This is not strength, it is dissociation. But you, if you are listening to this, are ready for something deeper. You are ready to step out of the mask, out of the projection, and into your authentic inner authority. This is the return to the self. And it is not easy. It will cost you the fantasy of being chosen by the one who never truly saw you. It will cost you the illusion of fixing what was never yours to heal. It will cost you the identity of the rescuer, but in its place, you receive something far greater, your truth. This truth is not loud. It does not perform. It does not seek to convince. It is silent and radiant and firm. It is the knowing that arises when the soul is no longer starving for validation. And in that knowing, the narcissist loses their grip, not because they have changed, but because you have now a mystery unfolds. Once you have reclaimed your light, the narcissist may attempt to return, not always in person, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in memories, sometimes through new people wearing similar masks. This is not regression, it is initiation. The psyche is testing your alignment. It is asking, will you give away your fire again? Will you trade your essence for illusion? Or will you stand rooted in your wholeness and let the echo pass? And you will know the answer not by your words, but by your energy. You will feel the inner tremor, the pull, the nostalgia, the ache, and you will breathe through it. You will hold your center and you will whisper, not to them, but to yourself, I am already home. This homecoming is sacred. It is not a destination. It is a remembering the soul, once scattered by longing, now calls its pieces back. The child who overgave, the lover who overcompromised, the healer who over-identified, all return, not to be shamed, but to be held, to be seen, to be integrated. And in that integration, you become something rare in this world, whole, not perfect. Whole, to be whole is to no longer seek completion in another. It is to relate from fullness, not from lack. It is to love without losing, to give without vanishing, to walk alongside another without becoming their path. This then is the antidote to narcissistic entanglement. Not distance alone, but depth. Not boundaries alone, but embodiment. Not rage alone, but reclamation. You must become the source you once searched for in them, and you always were. But the soul sometimes needs to forget in order to remember, it needs to give its fire away to understand its value. It needs to walk through illusion to awaken to truth. And so, if you feel that you have been used, manipulated, drained, know this, you were not foolish. You were being initiated not by the narcissist, but by the deeper self within you. That self allowed the encounter not for punishment, but for revelation. It knew that only through contrast would you come to recognize your own light. And now that you have, the journey changes no longer toward the other, but inward, downward, into the depths where the true work begins. Not the healing of them, but the integration of you. This is the mystical path. It does not require revenge. It does not require explanation. It requires presence and courage and a willingness to become the mirror that reflects only truth, no longer the mask they demanded. But the self you are, you will walk through many thresholds now. New relationships will arise, not as replacements, but as invitations. Each will ask you, will you give from fullness or from emptiness? Will you seek recognition or connection? Will you perform or will you reveal? The answer will not come from effort, but from embodiment, because when you have truly reclaimed your light, the world rearranges around you. The narcissist fades, the mask dissolves, the old stories lose their power, and in their place, a new narrative begins, not of rescuing others, but of honoring the self. That is your task now, not to escape darkness, but to hold your light steady within it, not to fight the narcissist, but to outgrow the role they once cast you in, not to seek love from broken mirrors, but to become the clear water in which your own soul can finally be seen. And so we arrive at the sacred threshold, not an ending, but a re-entry. For every confrontation with darkness must be followed by a return to light, not a naive or untested light, but one that has passed through the fire. A flame tempered by discernment, a radiance no longer offered as tribute to those who refuse to kindle their own. This is the paradox of true healing, that it returns you not to who you were, but to who you always were, beneath the spell. And make no mistake, it was a spell. The narcissist, whether aware of it or not, casts enchantments through charm, through vulnerability, through mirroring. But the most powerful spell is the one you cast upon yourself, when you told your soul that it must be earned, bargained for, given away, to be seen. That spell has now been broken, but in its place must come something stronger. A vow not to protect yourself with armor or suspicion, but to walk forward in fierce clarity. Clarity, not as a weapon, but as a light cutting through illusion, guiding you back to your own rhythm. The narcissist thrives in confusion, projection, distortion, but you no longer reside there. You have remembered the language of symbols, the whispers of dreams, the subtle movements of the psyche. The unconscious speaks in myth, and the myth you once lived of sacrifice, of mistaken identity, of wounded savior, has served its purpose. Now a new story begins, one in which you are not the rescuer, not the reflection, not the echo. You are the voice. You may feel it stirring now. Quietly, the voice you once silenced to keep the peace. The voice that asked long ago, is this love or is this hunger dressed in poetry? That voice is sacred. It is the self calling you back from exile. And as you heed it, you begin to embody a new kind of presence. You no longer flinch at silence. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You no longer light yourself on fire to warm the cold rooms of someone else's denial. This is not abandonment. This is return. Do not be surprised if this return feels unfamiliar. Many who have lived for the sake of others will find it strange to live for the sake of the soul. But this strangeness is a sign you are walking a path few have dared to follow, the path of individuation. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is self-remembrance. It is the process of becoming who you were before the world taught you who to be. And this requires solitude, inner listening, and a reverent descent into the unconscious. It is there in that deep symbolic sea that you will find the true roots of the narcissist shadow. And more importantly, your own. You see, every entanglement carries within it a message. And the narcissistic bond is no exception. It reveals where you still fear your own power, where you still long for approval, where the child within you still kneels at the altar of being good enough, but the self does not ask you to be good. It asks you to be whole, and wholeness means integration, not perfection. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to mourn. You are allowed to grieve, not only the person you lost, but the identity you wore to keep them close. The people pleaser, the forgiver, the empath whose compassion outpaced their discernment, grieve them all. Hold their hands as you let them go. Thank them for what they protected. And then breathe into the new shape your soul is forming. One with clear boundaries and sacred yeses. One that no longer confuses healing with self-erasure. One that knows love as mutual, reciprocal, radiant, not consuming, not clinging, not performative. You may now see the narcissist as a fragment, not a monster, not a mystery, not a god, just a person trapped in their own disconnection from the self. And though you cannot save them, you can let them go without hatred. This too is a form of freedom. And then comes the true work, the cultivation of inner sanctuary, a place inside yourself that no projection can breach, a space untouched by manipulation. This space is tended by dreams, by reflection, by slowness. Here, your intuition is no longer hijacked by need. It becomes a compass again. You begin to hear the quiet truths beneath the noise. And here, the archetypes shift. You are no longer echo. You are no longer Narcissus. You are psyche now, soul awakened, initiated through suffering, rejoined with the divine essence. You are the dreamer who no longer dreams of rescue, but of creation. You begin to write again, to paint, to dance, to walk alone under the stars and feel not emptiness, but connection, the kind of connection that requires nothing from you, but presence. This is the afterlife of illusion, and it is real. It is here that you may finally begin to speak to others, not from the place of unhealed empathy, but from embodied truth. You may encounter those still entangled in the narcissist's web, and you will see them not as fools, but as souls in mid-initiation. You will know that no amount of advice can wake the one who still worships the mask. And so you will offer not solutions, but presence, a quiet radiance, an invitation. You see, your healing does not end with you. It ripples. When one soul remembers its light, others are reminded. When one voice returns, the echoes begin to quiet. This is how we change the world, not through crusade, but through consciousness. And so I offer you not a closing, but a continuation. As you leave this place, I invite you into a deeper kind of inner practice, not a task, not a doctrine, but a quiet daily turning toward yourself, toward your symbols, toward your shadows, toward the voice you once gave away. Perhaps you will sit in silence each morning and ask, what part of me have I ignored today? Perhaps you will begin to notice which dreams return, which archetypes appear, which mirrors you now avoid or embrace. Perhaps you will learn to walk slower, speak less, feel more, not because you are afraid, but because you are listening. The unconscious rewards reverence. It will not shout, but it will show a feather on the path, a sudden memory, a chill in the spine, an image in a dream that feels too precise to be random. These are the breadcrumbs. Follow them not with desperation, but with wonder. And when you begin to feel your light returning steady, unthreatened, whole, do not rush to give it away. Sit with it. Let it illuminate the inner temple. Let it touch the places you once banished into the dark. Let it warm the wounds, not for someone else's comfort, but for your own resurrection. There is no arrival, only deepening. You will still meet shadows. You will still feel the old ache when someone reminds you of the one who drained you. But now you will have language, you will have tools, you will have the self as your guide. And the self, once awakened, never sleeps again. It waits, it watches, it calls you back each time you forget, and it rejoices each time you return. This, then, is the final truth. Your light is not here to save others from their darkness. It is here to reveal your own wholeness. Do not fear the ones who seek to borrow it, but do not confuse their need for your purpose. Let your love be fierce. Let your boundaries be holy. Let your presence be your protest against the forces that ask you to shrink. You are not here to echo. You are here to speak. You are not here to reflect. You are here to become. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to remember that you already belong to yourself, to the soul, to the great unfolding mystery of the inner world. And now, quietly, without announcement, without performance, go forward. Live as one who remembers. Live as one whose light is no longer negotiable. Live as one who no longer fears the mirror. Because they have become the flame,